Everybody, welcome to Passionate About Music Education, and I'm Rachel Hardman. It's nice to have you back, and this is the second part of how to have a calmer start to September, how to reduce your stress going back into term 1, and this is hopefully some great tips for beginner teachers right up to experienced teachers, because we all know that once we go back, however much we would love to have plenty of time to plan and photocopy and to do all the admin parts of our job that we need to do, in reality obviously teaching gets filled up with training and new agendas, new ideas, new initiatives, and it's an exhausting start to the term. You do a lot of sitting, a lot of talking, a lot of listening to new ideas, recapping school policies, and all the time that you think you're going to have to do all the planning, and the photocopying suddenly disappears, and then it can be very stressful because it's going to go at 100 miles an hour. You're going to have the children back in, your room's not quite set up as you want it, you haven't got the resources put in place, you don't actually even know who the children are in your class, what children are taking your exam classes until you walk back in September. So there's a lot of change, a lot of flexibility needed in that first term in a way that you don't have in term 2 and term 3. So I'm going to give you a couple of strategies leading on from the previous episode that hopefully will not require an awful lot of time or preparation too much in advance, but will be a game changer in reducing your stress when you go back in September. So what I like to do is I like to have a basic spreadsheet or a basic Word document, and I create a table. And in that table, I'll either do half term or I'll do the term. And I'll break it into year 7, 8, 9, 10, GCSE, AP, A-level, IB, whichever courses you're doing. If you're doing band or choir, you might want to put 5th year band or 6th grade band or whatever you work with in terms of your timetable. And I will block week the 7th of September, 14th of September, whatever the Monday is of each week. And I'll probably just do it for half term. And in it, I will have a rough idea of what I'm going to teach for that term. I won't plan every lesson in detail at this stage because there's so much, particularly with the exam classes, GCSE, A-level, IB, if you don't know 100% who's coming in to your classes, you don't want to plan that too much in detail at this stage because that's quite tricky to do it and very time consuming, because you might find what you've planned, you turn up and the children aren't in the course anymore, or they've changed schools, or you've suddenly got 3 new children who need some basic theory or didn't do GCSE music, and your planning has to change. So I have a rough idea of what I'm going to do. So for instance, in year 7, I'll be doing a topic on pitch and rhythm, and then I'll block in it just a couple of words what I'm going to do each session. So I might do stave notation, ostinatos, just so I have a rough idea. This is a rough idea of where I'm going, an overview. What is the end goal? I often talk about the end goal. When am I going to do my assessment? Am I going to do it at the end of the half term or after the half term holiday? When are the reports due? So I'll have all of that information in this document. For year 8, I might do scales. Year 9, I might start with the blues. And then again, I would kind of look at how many lessons I'm going to spend on each topic. For GCSE and A-level or IB, I would, because you might get more lessons with those, you should get 3 or 4 lessons a week with them, depending on how your school is structured in the timetable and the day schedule. I would then maybe have 1 lesson for performing, 1 lesson for composing, 1 lesson for listening and history. Now, at this stage, this is a rough idea to give me some kind of planning schedule, but it might not be exactly how I teach it when I return into the 3rd or 4th week. Again, it has to be some flexibility depending on the students you have in your class. So you have to have that flexibility in your planning at this stage, at this very early stage. Once you know them, when you come back in January, it's a totally different scenario, because you know where they're already at, what they can and can't do, because you've spent the term with them. So your planning will be much more effective when you come back in January, because you'll know the students better. So I will also write into this very simple schedule report deadlines, any trips, any days that are cancelled due to school holidays, or Maybank holidays, those kind of days where we get those odd days off depending where you live, in which country. I put them in. I put in if there's a trip, or if there's photos being taken on that day, because there's a good chance that will impact how many real lessons that you get with those students in your half term or your term blocking, and that will help you really plan your pacing for the term. And that's when you will then start planning in more detail as you come back into September, of how quickly you can go within your lessons and differentiate for the students depending on their ability. And then probably in the summer holidays, I will plan a couple of weeks worth of lessons for the hardest class in more detail. And I don't mean hardest in terms of behaviour, I mean hardest in terms of time consuming. And for me, that was always your IB and GCSE, because those classes you see more frequently, and because they're exam classes, you will have to do much more preparation, particularly if you're doing IB or A level and you're doing analysis of scores and explaining it to students. That takes quite a lot of time for preparation for music teachers, which is always hard work because there's so limited resources, but that stuff takes a bit of time. So that's what I would work on and focus on, so that at least I know when I go back in, because I won't have time during PD, I won't have time during all the training of the first couple of days, I won't have time to sit down and do this work. Those are the areas that I do the work in the holidays, so that I have more free time when I go back in. I've already got a couple of weeks of worth of ideas of lessons planned, and then once I know what my students are like and the speed, and that they can work out the differentiation, what they play, then I can pick up the pace and change my lessons accordingly. So that's what I do at the beginning, before I go back into school, to make it much more effective and to have a bit of control of what you can control. There's an awful lot at the beginning of a school year that you can't control, that you are reliant on information coming to you from other people, but that area you can control, and you can have a good idea of what you're going to do over the first term. If you want to plan for the whole year in that way, that's depends on your position, whether you're a classroom teacher or a line manager or a head of department. So I hope that tip's helpful. The other tip that I'm going to suggest, because obviously we don't really know what September is going to look like for any of us, or August is going to look like for any of us, but particularly with COVID at the moment, and we're all kind of guessing what that looks like, and in fairness, who could possibly make the best call at the moment, because it's just such an unknown. So I would suggest that you consider planning lessons that are achievable online, which in music education is really difficult. And I know, go on any forum, go on any conversation with colleagues, that trying to work out how you're going to do practical lessons with children remotely, how you're going to keep bands going and singing, is a real tough challenge. And I'm just so impressed at how much work people were doing last term. People were putting virtual choir performances together and online recitals, and just achieving so much amazing, fantastic work out there. It was really very impressive. So really I would be planning, or what I plan to do, and might be a good idea, is to plan classes and a music appreciation as much as you can. We want our children to love music. We want them to create their own identity from music. We want them to, explore different styles and genres of music. Why not? Why not use this time, particularly with non-exam classes where you have a bit more freedom, to really go into different types of music, to look at country and western, or look at jazz and blues, and plan it more as a music appreciation, a listening, a research mini projects for online. And then if you're in hybrid, or you're in class with some students, then, and if you're allowed to, you can then bring in your instrumental practical work. Or if you're in class with all your children, you can go back into doing practical work. Because, for instance, if you, let's take the blues. If you're talking about the history of the blues, and you're talking about musical styles within the blues and genres and different performers, and doing a lot of historical understanding that's quite relevant at the moment. If you're actually doing that online, unless a child's got a keyboard at home, or access to instruments, it's quite hard for them to do the practical work, playing the walking bass line or the chords, or improvising. But if you plan the listening and the praising and the understanding, the appreciation, you can add those other elements if you go to the hybrid or to full classroom, back in classroom. So that work that you've done is is useful for doing it online, and then you can keep adding back in the practical work and reducing then maybe the historical context. But actually children understanding the historical context of music and where it comes from and why it's so important and how it impacted, how jazz and blues impacted the pop music that they listen to today is fantastic. It's real world. It's really important that children understand how music has developed. So don't feel that that's a waste. This is music appreciation. We want them to love jazz or blues or country and western or classical music or chamber music. That's our job, to give them the opportunity to explore these different genres. So consider planning for your lessons online, and then as and when we're allowed back in school or we're doing more work back in the classroom with children and we're allowed to use instruments, then you bring in the instrumental work back into it, and I think that was a good strategy going forward. And the last thing that music teachers are not so good at is staggering when you're going to start stuff, particularly in September. And of course this year might be completely different, but in the future when everything's back to normal, we're back in school, try not to do everything in week 1. It's too much for you, it's too much for the children. You've got to get back into the routine of being in school, commuting, planning lessons, going to meetings. All your time is taken in a way that's quite demanding in that first term. So my advice and what I think you should consider is have a week of getting to know the kids again, getting back into the school week. Give them a chance to get back to it. I know your instrumental teachers would be desperate to come back in and teach straight away, but actually children need to meet their class teachers. They need to go to their first lessons with their teachers, and understand what the science rules are and maths rules and DT rules. They need to do that the first week before you have instrumental teachers back in. It's really important because it builds better rapport with your colleagues, better understanding it, particularly if you've got children coming out for lessons on rotation during the day. Don't start all your clubs in 1 week. So if you're going to do 5 clubs a week because you love doing music clubs, which we all love doing them, and your clubs are all at lunchtime, don't do all 5 in the first week. Stagger it. Give yourself a little space. You will need time to encourage and recruit the students, do auditions if you do auditions. You will need time to photocopy music and make folders and plan what you're going to do. Practice even. I mean, if you've got a choir and you're the only music teacher, you've got to work out whether you're going to use a backing track or whether you're going to play the piano part. You've got to learn it to teach it to them. So try not to fill your time up completely with clubs all clubs in one go. Stagger them. The children will be fine. They will come. Just give yourself, because once you've started them, they generally run for the whole school year. So just give yourself a little bit of space in that respect. And again, if you're doing a school show and you're part of the school production, stagger your auditions, stagger when you're going to do your first rehearsals, plan out your rehearsals, but don't try and do everything within the first week. You will burn yourself out and you will be stressed before the school year's even really got going. Last tip for the start of the term is you must self-care. And I know you're going to go, hey Rach, there's no time, it's too busy, I've got too many lessons to prepare, I've got too much work to do, too much photocopying to do. I know, I understand, I've been there and I've said exactly the same thing you're saying to me. But if there's nothing I haven't learned over the last few years is you have to plan something for the first Saturday of the first week to look forward to. Take yourself to the spa, take yourself to the gym, book a night over at a hotel, go out for a nice dinner, go and see your family and friends, walk the dog, whatever it is. Make sure that you plan something to look forward to. There's a first term going at the first week when you've gone from having a really restful holiday and a beautiful, wonderful time off, and we're very lucky to have this, and then going back into full on 100 miles an hour concentration. And if you're a music teacher, the noise that goes on in the room with the instruments, it can be so overwhelming on the mind and exhausting on the body, and the stress builds up in your shoulder and you get all that tension, and you need ways of self-care. Don't let that slip. Keep that going, particularly physical self-care. Getting good sleep, eating healthily, going and doing some exercise, even if it's a 5-minute walk around the block. You'll take the dog out for a walk, go and stand by a lake, go around a park, go, if you're lucky enough to live near a beach, go to that. Whatever it is that you do, don't sacrifice that. The planning will be there, but having that 10 minutes, 15 minutes for you to de-stress, whether it's meditation or journaling, having a phone call with somebody that, you know, gives you positivity, will mean that when you go to your planning, you'll be more relaxed, more efficient, and you'll get it done much quicker, I promise. So make sure that when you go back, that you, whatever way it is, whether it's online, hybrid, or full on in the classroom, that you keep looking after your self-care, keep looking after your well-being. We want our music educators to stay in music and love teaching music to children. We want you to be well. We want you to stay healthy. We want you not to be burnt out. Self-care is so, so important. And I really wish somebody had taught me that 20 years ago. I hope these tips have been helpful, and I wish you the very best and calmest start to the school year. You will be amazing. You will make it work whatever happens, because that's what teachers do. They're incredibly creative, incredibly gifted, and so passionate about how they help children. Remembering all of that, you need to look after yourself too. This is Rachel Hardman, and passionate about music education. Thank you for joining me.